Please be advised that Little Miss Recap contains adult language. I can kind of just let that music play forever.
I love that song.
Hi, guys. Welcome to Little Miss Recap, the podcast where we talk about purses that cost more than our cars.
Yeah.
Definitely. Like 2 or 3 of those purses is probably what I paid for my first house.
I don't have a house and I don't think I could afford one nor that purse. But
No,
if
I
I
can't
had that
afford
purse,
any of
I'd
it.
move into the purse to live in.
There you go. There you go. My name's Amy Archer. I'm here with the lovely, now can I do this again? The lovely Leslie DJ. We're at the
Hey
club. We're at the
everyone.
club. No, we're
Whoop
really
whoop.
not. That was like the whitest thing I ever said. Um, Leslie and I are here to talk about And Just Like That, Season 2, Episode 3, Chapter 3. I want to know your overall thoughts before we get into this episode.
Chapter 3. There are so many thoughts that I have just throughout because there were visually some beautiful moments.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Miranda is back.
I feel like she might be.
She's back. She woke up.
When she was at that tattoo parlor and she's like, I don't want to go back to being who I was, the audience was screaming, we all want you to go back to who you were.
But in her defense, I get what she's trying to mean. I think that she meant not being complacent and just staying in a rut just
Sure.
because it's expected from her, or that is the life assigned to her that she believes she has to follow through on. I get
Yes.
that, but she was acting insane.
She was acting insane. And I want to say something else too. And I was talking about this over on Pink Shade or on Hey Bunky with Mary Payne. Che Diaz. I think I have
Che.
figured out what is wrong with Che Diaz.
Okay.
I think the writers, and we talked about like their tendency to tokenize people. I
Mhm.
think one of the things they do is they make Che Diaz's non-binariness such a part of the character.
Yeah.
And I think the best thing you could do to break down stereotypes to stop otherism is to just show people as normal people.
Yeah.
You know, like
Che is a
non-binary
normal
people are normal
person.
people.
Yeah.
Yes. Like they don't just sit around and talk about being non-binary all day. That's not what non-binary people do.
And also, comedians don't talk in terms of stand-up cliches
No.
as well.
And it didn't occur to me, like I was not able to diagnose this until I watched. Did you ever see Somebody Somewhere, that show on HBO?
No.
Oh, it's so good. And they
Is it like a
have
game show? Because I'm totally into that.
no, it's just a show about like normal looking people who have normal type friendships.
Mhm.
And one of the characters is trans, and the character's name is Fred. They're amazing. And guess what? You never talk about Fred's sexuality or gender identity or whatever. Fred has just normal storylines because Fred is a human being.
Right.
And it's like, oh, this is what it looks like when it's done right. Do
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and Che Diaz is the opposite of that.
You know what show that I am loving, which ties up back to this universe, starring Miss Kim Cattrall, Glamorous on Netflix.
Was that good? Because the
It is
trailer looked real
so
cringy.
no. It is adorable. It is
Really?
so it's kind of like Drop Dead Diva, that show that had this woman who was an attorney. She was like a hot looking type of model. She was a model and then she gets in a car accident, switches body with an attorney who was like kind of frumpy looking and was,
Oh, that
plus
sounds
size.
terrible. Okay.
Ew. But it was like really funny and cute. This show, a lot of it has a lot of queer people, it has a lot of people of color, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very Devil Wears Prada-like, and
Mm.
it's super silly, it's like bubblegum, it's just, filler, but they
Okay.
do talk on heavy issues about the queer community because there are a lot of queer actors and characters on the
Okay.
show, and it's really, really cute. I love it. I love all
Oh, I
that
might
stuff.
have to try it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm watching Somebody Somewhere, like I said, and it's so good. I'm so into it. And, maybe I'll watch it after, because 'cause we're also watching The Bear. Do you watch The Bear?
No. I thought that was a movie. Oh, no, is that Cocaine
That's
Bear?
Cocaine Bear. This is not dissimilar. This is like if Cocaine Bear was in a kitchen.
Okay.
So The Bear is, a show about what's his name? Everybody's screaming. The kid from Shameless, Lip from Shameless,
I don't
Jeremy, I
watch
forget
that
his name.
show.
But he's the lead and he is like a Michelin star chef and he comes back to Chicago to run like his brother's like rundown famous beef stand. And
Ooh.
it's really good. And a lot of the episodes are like done in one take. So it's like it captures the chaos of a kitchen. It's really, really good.
I'll check.
And
Where is it on?
it's on Hulu and it only is half-hour episodes.
Perfect. That's all I
Yeah.
need.
Yep. So it the second season just came out and it's amazing. Very, very good. Um so let's talk about something that's not real good. However, took a little heat for my hot take yesterday, which was, "Oh my god, guys, this episode doesn't suck." And I want to be very clear about something. I am
Okay.
comparing it against the body of its own work. Okay?
Right.
So, as opposed to season 1 and episodes 1 and 2 of season 2, I thought episode 3 was much better.
I honestly, when it ended, I paused it because you know how after the credits roll, then you get a little sneak preview of what next week on.
Mhm.
I paused it and I took a moment and to myself I said, "Was this good? This was enjoyable. These people seem more real now." And I
Yeah.
love that Lisette was back because I thought they were just gonna, write off
Yes.
everyone that they
Yes.
knew, just get rid of them.
I have some questions about Lisette, though. Let's
Well,
get
that's my
into it.
sister's name. That's why I love her so
Okay.
much.
Let's get into it. And just like that, season 2, episode 3, chapter 3. So we open on Carrie running into Lisette on the street. And I just wrote, this is so the problems with the original Sex and the City were always like, these people could not afford these apartments and blah, blah, blah. And I feel like this is more indicative of the original Sex and the City. Like, Lisette is an up and coming jewelry designer who's like in her 20s and lives in Carrie and Big's building.
Remember that the jewelry is her dream job and her fallback is just being a stupid model, you know?
Yeah. So I don't know. And I forget she did have a boyfriend. I
She was
remember that. Was
dating
he
a
loaded?
douchey guy. That was the one where we saw his dong, and I think that was
Right.
real.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, not Harry's dong. That wasn't real.
No, that was prosthetic, we were
Yeah.
told.
So, oh god, how cringy was that now that I'm thinking about it?
Oh, that
Oh.
dong.
Okay. So, Lisette is having a jewelry debut Friday night at an event in Grant Park. And Carrie has to run now because they're asking her to do an audiobook version of herself. And she's like, "Oh, they're embarrassingly asking me to do this audiobook version of my upcoming book, my memoir that I wrote about Big." And as she's running away, Lisette says, "Hey, you're Carrie Bradshaw. Nothing embarrassing about that. Leslie, women don't talk this way." We might say,
Honestly,
like, "You're fucking
yeah.
awesome," or "Keep going, queen." We don't talk like this, though.
See, what I would have said in real life, I would have been like, "Bitch, you're Carrie Bradshaw. Like,
Okay, that's better.
keep
Yeah.
you
Yep.
got this." That's how
Yes.
I would have
Yep.
said it.
You wouldn't have waited until I walked away halfway down the block and been like, "You're Amy Archer. You're
"Amy,
amazing."
you're
Like,
awesome!" And
no,
just
doesn't
embarrass
happen.
you.
Mm-mm. So, meanwhile, someone steals Seema's purse, and I just wrote, I think we see later this purse is 20 some $1,000. I paid that for my car. Like, I'm paying in payments that for my car.
$20,000 for me has gone towards a semester at school.
There you go. There you go. No one seems to help her, and she calls Carrie and she's like, "Why can't thieves just take my shit and ditch my bag like they used to?" And so now we see this overarching theme of like New York City's getting bad.
Yeah.
Now, you live in New York City. My sister lives in New York City. Now, my sister has echoed that during COVID it got a little cray
It
out
still
there.
is. We're still living through that. People don't know how to react or behave in public anymore. It's really cringy the way people act.
Well, we
It's
came
weird.
we came into the city, I wanna say it was May of 2022, and it felt very different to me.
It
There was
is, yeah.
literally trash all over the streets, and I don't feel
Mhm.
like that was a thing 3 years before that. I mean, there were certainly, New York City's not Disney. I mean, it's gonna be,
Right.
but I've been going to the city a long time, and I don't remember seeing huge trash piles when it's not garbage day on the curbs, and it just felt like trash was everywhere.
Yeah, and before we used to do a big thing about at least cleaning up the tourist areas, because like, the
Mhm.
neighborhoods, like, they'd be a mess, but at least the the popular areas
Yeah.
were cleaned up.
Yeah. It felt like a different city, but I don't know if that's just like that was during COVID and it's back to normal now. I haven't been there in a while. I'm not sure. So, I was getting your
But
opinion there.
also, her getting her bag stolen is reminiscent to an episode in Sex and the City where Carrie gets robbed and no one helps her and they
Yes.
steal her bag.
Yes.
And
Yep.
her shoes, actually, they steal her shoes, and that's why she was like, "These people are coming over for designer shoes. These thieves are, like, on another level.
These people are getting robbed left and right. I don't know what's happening.
They know what Manolo Blahniks are. These thieves are legit."
Yeah. So at Charlotte's kids' school, Charlotte and LTW are at some sort of board meeting, and they learn that some student has created a MILF list. This to me was the cringiest part of the entire episode.
Yeah, the fact
Is
that they loved it too.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. So meanwhile, we see Carrie narrating the book, and we meet Amanda, who works for the publisher. And this person says, "You need to be the one to read this book, like it's in your voice." And Carrie gets to chapter 3, and it's the chapter when she gets home and she discovers that Big is dead. And she just can't get through it. Like she keeps
Yeah.
restarting, she can't get through it. In California, please do, can we just not ever go there again? Like, I wanna secretly live in California, but I don't want Sex and the City to ever take me to California again
We
because their
saw
view
this
of
in
California is
season
dumb.
3. We saw this.
Mm,
It was like a, what, 2 or 3-story arc. We saw it. It did not
yeah,
end well.
yeah. So, Miranda's running lines with Che for a pretty serious scene in which Che and Tony Danza, yeah, you heard me. Che and Tony Danza are gonna have a heated discussion about Che being non-binary. And there's this kind of thread throughout that Miranda's phone is fucked up and it's an Android, and I hear this. Like, that's why I will never own an Android. I just won't.
iPhone for life.
iPhone for life. The script calls for Che to cry, and Che's like, "Oh, I don't have to cry." And Che says, "If I cry, it sends a signal that being non binary is a tragedy or that I'm unhappy, and that's just not true." And Miranda's like, "I think you have to cry." Mentions it quite a few times in the script. So Che starts to actually cry as they realize that this script feels really inauthentic to them. And then we have more phone stuff, and Miranda mentions that Brady is ghosting her. Now, I forgot to mention this, but when they were at the school earlier, LTW thanked Charlotte for introducing, no, thanked Miranda for introducing her to Naya. So they're trying to connect now and bring
Yes.
Naya in because Naya was on an island by herself.
Destroying her husband's property, basically.
Yeah, and she had no connection to any of these characters.
Right.
So finally, they're connecting her with LTW, which I think is good. So she's going to be interviewed for LTW's documentary LTD, and she's talking about. I think she's talking about like being a Harvard professor, right? Is she at Harvard?
Columbia.
Columbia. Thank you.
But it's Ivy League, so
Yeah,
it's a big
yeah.
deal. Mhm.
And her mic slips, and some hot dude has to fish it out of her shirt. And they flirt a little bit, and he asks her out, and she says no. And then later, after chatting with LTW, she changes her mind and texts him. Okay. Now they have this lunch. These women, I mean, they just, in the middle of the day, show up at these super fancy restaurants and have these really like crazy and elaborate lunches.
It seems so fun. That's never happened in real life. When you work in New York City, if you leave your office to go to lunch, that's like a special occasion. It's because a coworker is leaving or someone got a promotion and you're going to have a quick lunch, which takes like an hour and a half because of the service and all that. And
Mhm.
then you shove the food down your throat and then you run back to your office because that's how life works in New York. Or
Yeah,
you eat at your desk,
yeah.
shamefully, like I do, listening to Taylor Swift. Thank you.
So they're all like it's Charlotte and Carrie and Naya and LTW, and they're basically recapping the episode up to here. Like they're telling each other what happened. And LTW gets a hold of the MILF list, and she and Charlotte were numbers 2 and 3. Now I have a real problem with this. Not only is the storyline super cringe, but I got to look at some of those moms. Charlotte would not have been number 3.
Who
LTW
were
would
the
have been number
moms?
1.
Oh my god, that woman, I said this last week, she is so freaking gorgeous. Like, I'm Lord, the devil, I'm still up for it. Give me
Mhm.
that face.
Mhm. Mhm.
Jesus Christ, she's gorgeous.
Um, but do you agree? Like Charlotte should not have been way up there. Like, I don't
Well,
know.
she's a main character, so I guess
And
that's
she is
why
beautiful, but it's
she
like
is.
she's just so uptight and rich and out of touch. Like I can't imagine teenage boys being like, "Oh my god, she's so hot." I
You
don't know.
know you know who would have been out of those characters if they were like the mom? Like Samantha. They would have been like, "Oh,
Oh yeah.
Samantha is
Oh
like
yeah.
the
Yep.
hottest
Yep.
mom because of the sexiness and everything." And Charlotte is just so proper that
Teenage boys can sniff
yeah.
out when someone's DTF, and Charlotte is not.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say. Okay. So, Charlotte at one point says, "Oh, Naya, I assure you, our lunchtime fodder is not usually this lowbrow." And then Naya says, and this is so me, I felt seen in this moment because I am the wet blanket buzzkill on every conversation. Naya says, "Well, maybe we should talk about abortion rights or how our democracy is hanging by a thread or how the planet is dying." Like, this is me. Hmm.
I'd rather talk about dick. Yeah.
Hmm. Like, I can't get out of my head that crazy buzzkillness that I bring to every conversation. It's unfortunate. So, back to Carrie. She's reading her book and she just can't do it and she starts to cry. And this, so I have to say something. When I was done with this episode, I literally said out loud, "This is why Carrie is the main star of the show. This is why it is Sarah Jessica Parker's show." Because this
Sarah
storyline was great.
Sarah Jessica in that moment and all those takes when she was in that booth
Mhm.
reading and having, those long pauses because she is reliving it in a sense. And
Yeah.
then I love the cinematography when you
Mhm.
kind of see it like being pushed in and I'm like, are they going to show like that scene? I don't want to see that again, but they don't. But you hear the water.
Yes.
I thought it was beautiful. I was like, "Sarah Jessica, if you show this scene at the Emmys or something,
Oh, I'm gonna slow your roll right there, Leslie.
just that little scene alone,
No.
she would get
No, no, no,
nominated."
no,
I
no.
was
Mm-mm,
moved. I'm
mm-mm.
sorry. I was moved.
I'm gonna say this right now, you can consider it a hot take. If Sarah Jessica Parker wins an Emmy for "And Just Like That," there will be riots in the street.
Oh, she's not gonna win. I'm saying to get nominated for that little scene alone because I
Okay,
thought it was beautiful.
maybe it'd be like a pity nom. Because although her work is amazing in the Sex and the City universe, eh, I don't
Oh,
know.
this show is not gonna get recognized for anything.
So, all right, she starts to cry and she said, "I should be over this. Like, I don't get it." And so they eventually decide they're going to skip chapter 3. And then she's walking home and they run into Bitsy. Now, I remember Bitsy a little bit from the original, right?
Bitsy Man Mufflin.
Okay. And she lost her husband too. Now, did she lose her husband in the original series or is this a new thing?
No, in season 1, in the first episode where she sees the ladies having lunch, she's like, "Oh, where's the other one?" And she's, referring to Samantha, and then she talks about that she lost her Bobby, which was played by Nathan Lane, famously
Oh,
gay in the
okay.
show as well,
Okay. God,
but
I forget that.
she didn't have gaydar, and everybody was
Hmm.
like, "They're married?" It was like a whole thing in season 5. Season 5 was not the best, it was kinda cut short because Sarah Jessica was pregnant, so was,
Yeah.
Cynthia Nixon, but yeah, that was her
Hmm.
husband, Nathan Lane,
Okay.
who died during COVID, so after Big dies, she says, like, "We didn't even get to have a funeral because of COVID." So
Mm, okay. I thought you meant Nathan Lane died of COVID. I'm like, "Whoa, breaking
no, no, no,
news."
God, no, 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 he's alive and well, his
Protect him.
character. Please protect him, I love him so much.
So Bitsy says, the second year is the worst because Carrie's like, I got through that whole first year. And Bitsy says the second year is the worst. You feel further and further away from him. There's all these things happening that he's not here for. And she says, some days I'm fine and other days I'm just faking it. And then she says, the hole never fills, but new life will grow around it. So go plant some seeds. And I loved this
Yeah,
because I think, I'm doing some work at work about grief, and I just listened to this podcast episode and they were talking about this guy whose wife died after 40 years, and he was like, there's something wrong with me cuz I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be alone. I need to be in another relationship, blah 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 blah. And bottom line, what they came to realize is this guy had never grieved because he is I think as a culture we associate grief as a passive action and not an active
right.
process. So we think if I lose somebody and 2 years goes by and I should stop feeling sorry for them and that should be the grieving process is over. But that's not it. And so
It's
like on this
not.
podcast they had to literally like walk this guy through like here's how to grieve. Like if you're missing your wife at breakfast, like sit with that and feel it and cry and talk to her even though she's not there. You know what I mean? And like allow yourself to feel those feelings. And I thought, "Oh, this is really interesting because Carrie has not let herself do that."
No, we had Charlotte do that last season all the
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
You know, what's interesting about this, and right before season 2 started, and I think I mentioned it last week, I rewatched all of season 1 of And Just Like That. I've personally been going through a lot of loss, family
Mhm.
members, friends, and I've been grieving, and it's hard to understand how to grieve because there are moments when I'm like, "Why are people laughing? Why are people talking? Why
Mhm.
is the world continuing? My cousin is dead. Like,
Mhm.
why is this why?" And you get really upset, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, they didn't experience that loss, and even those who did, life keeps moving. Even if you decide to not get out of bed for a week, guess what? That week still goes by,
Yeah.
and you just have to figure out how to grieve. And when I was growing up, the way we grieved or the way my mom grieved was, like, no music, no TV, like,
Mhm.
for months, and I
Mhm.
can't do that. I need to listen to music. To me, music helps me
Yeah.
get over things.
Right.
So, there are times when I'm listening to a happy song and then I feel guilty because it's like, "Oh, I don't want it to seem like I'm celebrating and someone that
Mhm.
I love is no
Mhm.
longer with us, but this is how I cope because I cannot fall apart every day."
Well,
So,
and
I
you bring up
totally
a
get
good
that.
point. Like everybody's grieving process is different. I think the underlying thing though, the important thing is that you allow yourself to feel
Yeah.
something. Like whatever you feel when you're listening to that music, like that is processing that for you. And I think
Yeah.
we just as Americans especially, we're like just shut that off and move forward. Shut it off and move forward. And another thing these podcast hosts who are both therapists were saying to this guy is there's a difference between moving on and moving forward. Like when you move forward, you bring grief with you, and you bring memories of that person with you, and that's fine.
Mhm.
But people try to move on, which is like you just move over it. And those are two very different things. And we should
You
be
shouldn't
working on moving forward.
you should just allow yourself to feel what you feel.
Yeah.
And there are days where I still can't get out of bed. I mean, this was very recent for me. Even when I lost one of my best friends during COVID in 2020, it was weird because I spoke to this person every single day. Like we were texting even the
Yeah.
day she passed. That morning, she messaged me and
Mhm.
I didn't see it because I was caught up in something. And then when I responded,
Mhm.
unbeknownst to me, she was already dead.
Yeah.
And then I'm
Yeah.
like, "Why isn't she responding? This is so weird."
Mhm.
So, you have to learn to move forward because
Mhm.
life is gonna keep moving whether you're still grieving or not, no
Yeah,
matter
and
what. be a
I
downer, but it's
no,
just
no, no, I
facts, you know?
agree, and I thought that the fact that we can have this conversation based on this episode just shows you, like, this was a deep episode. The
It
Carrie
was.
storyline was. I really enjoyed it, and I think, more of this, like, more of this, please. Even the stuff around Che, and we'll get to it, was more interesting to me.
Because Che is more dimensional now,
Yes.
not
Yes,
just
which
a
is what you were saying last week.
yeah,
Yeah,
not just like a comic that spits out stale lines.
right. So, Carrie buys a bunch of shoes, thinking this will help her plant those seeds and feel better. And then she decides to fake getting COVID, and she calls the publishing company and she says, "I can't do it." And I thought this was funny. I get why they were doing it, but she should just called them and said, "I'm not doing it. I don't want to."
Right, because she was okay with not reading a vaginal ad, so
Right.
why
Right.
can't she say, "This is so personal, this is
Right.
so hard for me." She could have even requested maybe have someone else read that chapter for
Yeah.
her, because 'cause I've
Yeah.
heard audiobooks where they'll have, like, a guest person read a
Mhm.
chapter.
Oh my god, I would love to read audiobooks. I don't have a
Me
good enough
too.
voice to do it, but I
I think
do
you do.
I would love to do it. I sound a little bit like I'm a little raspy. I think you need, like, a good soothing kind of voice, but I would love to do it. So then we get a weird scene with Miranda, and she's basically having a therapy session with some tattoo artist. And she's saying, "I don't ever want to go back to who I am. Like, I was this little robot." And I was screaming, "We all want you to go back. We all want you to go back." But I
Please
understand
come
what you're
back.
saying. She
Yeah.
needs to find, and this has been our problem with her all along. Does Miranda need to break out of her little robot box? Sure, but like this is not that answer. Like there's something in between.
Yeah.
So one of the best lines was when she calls Carrie and she goes, I'm on the precipice of doing something stupid." And Carrie goes, "If this involves the Church of Scientology."
Oh my god.
It's pretty good. So Miranda says she's afraid of commitment because then she has no control. And then Carrie even lies to her and says she has COVID. And I was surprised by that. Charlotte calls. She's like, "I heard you have COVID. I'm sending you a bunch of shit, blah, blah, blah." Seema and Anthony are having lunch waiting for Carrie. She texts them that she has COVID. And Anthony says, "Now she's got COVID? That's very off trend for her."
Yes, she would have been at the forefront of this because Carrie is always at the forefront of everything.
Yes. And
You
this
know,
does,
can I
yeah,
say
go ahead.
something,
Yeah.
Amy? When I first saw Anthony and Seema sitting together, I was like, "Huh, this
How
is
did that
weird.
happen?
Why would they be sitting together?" But then their banter was so good, and then you get the text, it's like, "Oh, wait, they're waiting for Carrie," and I
Yeah.
was like, "Brilliant.
Yeah.
Now this is a reason why they would be together."
Yeah.
And Anthony, I think he fits perfectly. He's essentially one of the gals.
Yeah. I love him. I love
I
him.
love Marion Cantone, I love him.
Yep. So her little plan to have fake COVID doesn't work because Amanda calls and she's like, "Good news, I got you an extension." So, okay. Now at school, this was so fucking cringy. LTW and Charlotte and a bunch of the mothers are gathered there and they're waiting for the perpetrator of the MILF list to come out of the principal's office. And it's like, it's okay. The guy's cute, but like he's still probably 17. Like, what are you guys doing?
It's like, I get why he would be conventionally, quote, unquote, "hot" to teenage girls, mind you,
Right.
but it made me feel icky, and I'm in my 30s, and I'm like, "Oh my god, this is disgusting." Like, I wouldn't wanna date a 28-year-old because their minds, for the ones that I, know, are still pretty much like a teenage mind. So,
Just
why would
oh,
I do
no.
that?
No, thank you. Anyone who knows me knows I'm into holdies, my age and up, that's it. Never going below.
Or at least
Um,
looking old, like, have that zaddy look like Jeff Goldblum.
yes. Are you okay? Come back to earth.
Okay, I'm back, I'm back.
But my thing is, imagine if the roles were reversed and this was a group of men talking
Oh my
about a
god.
woman.
No, no, no,
Ugh.
no, no. First of all, if it got written, the whole internet would have exploded, FCC would have gotten
Yes.
involved.
Yeah. I mean, these women are actually like, yum. Like they are into him. Now at the assembly.
Ugh,
Go
he's
ahead.
gross. If he had been, like, maybe a TA or something and he was, like, in his 21, let's say,
Sure.
still gross, but
Yeah,
come
yeah.
on.
So the principal says they're putting this issue on the student's record, and Charlotte's like, "Oh, it shouldn't be on his permanent record. This is ridiculous." And then some of the parents are like, "Oh, you're only saying that because you're on the list." And they're like, "What?" Oh, it's so cringy, guys. I can't even. And they get called out for objectifying him. Whatever. Now Miranda's in line for Chase taping, and Brady calls. This was another I thought really good storyline.
Yeah,
Brady calls. He's crying and he's very distraught. And he's like, I've been trying to get a hold of you for a day and a half now. I'm really upset. Louisa broke up with me. And then Miranda hears like a car go whoosh, beep, beep. And she's like, what was that? And he says, a car almost hit me and I wish it had. And so, like, he's clearly very distraught.
yeah.
And she's really scared, like really scared. And she's like, okay, here's what I need you to do. I need you to go to the hostel and I need you to call me and blah, blah, blah. And at one point, though, he's like, I've been trying to get a hold of you. And she says, did you call your father? And he
Yeah.
says, yes, but I wanted you. And I'm thinking, why didn't Steve call Miranda and say, like, Brady's in trouble?
Maybe Steve is still pissed?
Oh, right. Steve had a brain transplant. I forgot. Steve is
Yeah.
now a bumbling fool. We forgot
No, no,
about
no,
that.
he can't hear, so he probably didn't even hear the distress in his
Right.
voice.
He's just an idiot now. So they're going into the taping and they take the phones and Miranda sneaks hers in and of course it goes off. It's not Brady calling. That would have been more normal, but it's like she hit the wrong button and she's FaceTiming him and she has the sound on cuz Miranda doesn't know how to react or treat electronics, I guess.
Well, before that, she said, "Well, this is a new phone, I don't understand it, I don't hear it, so maybe it had been on silent," so then I have no idea.
I don't know. And this happens right as Che is filming this very intense scene with Tony Danza.
Mhm.
So there's this whole thing now where the whole audience is screaming at Miranda. The director stops and they're yelling at Miranda, and Miranda leaves. And then there's this like production assistant who's misgendering Che. Like it's so weird. I don't even know what's happening. The audience is like, Che sucks. Tony Danza defends Che. It's so weird.
Yeah,
So,
because the non-binary, like, I guess, producer or someone who
yeah,
wanted the blue streak was
yeah.
kind of like, "Che is not an actor, you ruined this take, Che finally was showing some emotion." You
Mhm.
don't even see that in front of talent, you would never say that,
Mm-mm.
that's
Mm-mm.
horrible.
Mm-mm. Miranda leaves and she calls Charlotte and she's like crying and she's like, am I overreacting? Am I doing the right thing? Charlotte says, you are 100% doing the right thing. This is serious. This is a problem. You're not overreacting. And Miranda's like, but what about Che? And Charlotte's basically like, fuck Che. Like, you got to
Thank
worry
you.
about Brady right now. And you're doing the right thing and you need to come home. And then she's like, and Brady's going to be fine, whatever. I just loved this because my best friend has twin boys, Steph. She has twin boys. They're 4 years older than my kids. And even though I have not spent a ton of time with them in my life, I think of those boys as my own. Like, I could see us having this kind of conversation where I would be crying, saying, like, I promise you, your boys are going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's a whole
I
thing.
was actually impressed with Charlotte that Charlotte didn't start crying because
Well,
she'd
she
be the
did at the
first
end.
one.
She did a little bit. She was crying when she said, like, Brady's going to be okay and I love you. She was tearing up.
That
So,
moment for me was so beautiful because Miranda was, like, acting like a mom, and remember, in the history
yes.
of this whole series, she never wanted to be a mom. It kinda
Yes.
happened accidentally. While she
Mhm.
was pregnant, she found out the gender of the baby, she wasn't even excited, she faked her sonogram, like,
Mhm.
I'm excited, it's a boy."
Yeah.
It's been hard for her to channel into that mother instinct. But
Yes.
even in the first season of And Just Like That, when she saw Che and Brady smoking pot, mama bear. So there
Yeah.
are those moments where she's like, "This is my fucking kid. I need
Yeah.
to be there." And
Yeah.
I have a question for you when you get to the next thing that happens.
Well, I really loved that she called Charlotte, and that made sense because Charlotte's a
Yeah.
parent. Do
Charlotte's
you
a
know what I
parent.
mean? So that made because at first I was like, "Why didn't she call Carrie?" Although I think Carrie would have given her the same advice.
Yeah,
You don't have to be a parent to understand loving a child. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So, like, I think Carrie would have did the same thing. So now Seema shows up at Carrie's, and Carrie admits that she doesn't have COVID. And Seema gives her this talk on grief and, what we just kind of talked about. And she says, I wasn't here for the first round, but like I'm here now. And, we could go through this. So now we go back to California, and Che comes out of the studio, and Che is pissed at Miranda. And Miranda's like, this is my family. This is real life. I had an issue here. I'm so worried about Brady. And Che is basically like, it's a breakup. They're kids. Like, chill out. What is your issue? And Che says,
Yeah.
you ruined it. Like, you ruined the scene. And so then Miranda says, my kid is the most important thing in the world to me. And Che says, well, I guess we're even. So Che is equating these two things. You screwed up my taping to your son could possibly be suicidal in a different country.
I was so pissed at that moment with Che because I'm like, I get the frustration of like, you ruined the take. Like, what was so important? But the moment that you see Miranda on the verge of tears in full panic, my son is suicidal. I need to get home.
Mhm.
Che should have been like, oh shit, do what you gotta do. And then
Yeah.
Che is trying to guilt Miranda into kind of staying. That
Yeah,
was
it's so
awful.
weird. And then I just wrote that Miranda immediately forgives this and is simping again for Che. And I wrote, imagine what the real Miranda would say. Like, imagine Miranda, Sex in the City season 4. What would she say if she saw Che and Miranda having this argument?
She would have been like, fuck you. That's
Yes.
my kid.
Yes.
Peace out.
Yes. So then we have this jewelry show in Grant Park, Lisette's jewelry show, and someone steals the jewelry. It's really weird. Like, someone just walks around, steals the jewelry.
But he's
And no
very
one
well dressed, by
Yes,
the
and no
way.
one does anything. Lisette and Seema are screaming. Then the dude wants Seema and Carrie's jewelry, and Carrie will not give up her necklace. So Seema pulls out what we think is a gun, but it's really a lighter. But here's my thing: this jewelry thief is a terrible thief. Because number one, he doesn't even imply that he has a gun. He's just like looking at them, like, give me your jewelry. He allows Seema to dig around in her purse for 20 minutes. You know she's going to come out with something.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing, dude? Criminal 101. Like, learn how to criminal. Jesus.
It's like the
So,
moment the person you're attacking is roaming around something, that means they're probably armed. You run.
yes. Yes. Or like knock that purse out of her hand. So, we see Miranda get home. Brady comes in. He's sobbing. She comforts him. I'm sobbing at this point. I don't know what was going on with me. I was having all the feels. Then we see Seema. She gets stuck in traffic. She gets out to walk home. And as she does, she finds her purse. So we have the purse. It was like
But
ditched.
you forgot to mention how she found it. A beautiful dog appeared
She
and
was
she went
petting
to
a little
pet the
dog.
dog.
She was petting
Dogs
a
are
cute little
heroes.
dog. Mhm. Um, so Carrie checks on Lisette and finds her lying in bed. And Lisette says, everything I've worked for, everything I've accomplished is gone, and I have to start all over. And Carrie's like, I hear you, like I'm in the same boat. And she lies down next to her, and they zoom out and they're kind of like Titanic, like Jack and Rose on the door. Oh, except both of them were on
Too
there.
soon, too soon, too soon.
And uh and the box of candies there. I'm like, is no one gonna eat that box of candy? It looked amazing. Looked
I know.
amazing. Now we see Carrie. She's reading her chapter 3. She gets it done, nails it. And the end scene is her and Seema running into a rugby team in a crowded restaurant. And they laugh and they drink. And Carrie says, and just like that, I got COVID.
So for me, that part, the whole the guy stealing the jewelry thing, I was just like, oh my God, this is insane. Stop trying to make my city seem even scarier than it is.
Yeah, yeah.
But also, Brady. I was impressed by that actor
The
because
actor
I
was
hated
great.
him season 1.
Yes, no, he was really good. Like that was a teenage
I
crying.
felt that. And the
Mhm.
look in his face, the voice, the way it, it was trembling. And
Mhm.
as soon as, oh my God, I feel like crying now. Like Miranda's sitting there and he walks in, he's like, Mom. And it's like, I've
Mhm.
had those moments
I know.
where no matter how old you are, you just need your mom to freaking hug you.
We
Oh,
we
it's
we had
beautiful.
one this weekend because or this week because I took my daughters for the driving test and one passed and one failed.
Oh no.
And the one that failed was devastated. And it was that kind of like just sobbing, sobbing, sobbing. And I think like she was embarrassed more than anything. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I just felt so bad for her. And I've also been in that position where you hold it all together and then I see my dad and I'm like, whew, like forget it.
Yeah.
Like just the dam is broken. But overall, I like to end thinking about what I'm liking and what I'm not liking. Overall, again, like I said, this is Carrie's show. And this
Yeah.
episode proved that because when she has a good storyline, that can carry the entire show. And I
Yeah.
think her kind of reliving her grief and thinking about her grief was really powerful and I really liked it. What are you liking?
Especially, I'm thinking about like how season 1 with the whole thing, it was shocking, and then it was like she was kind of moving along towards grief. Everybody else was more distraught than she was. She was holding
Mhm.
it together, still pulling the looks because of course she has to look fabulous even when she's grieving. But then having that moment with her reliving it in terms of having to read that chapter of finding him. It
Mhm.
was like, "Oh no, this is what real grief looks like when you've been pushing it off. It will
Mhm.
come to the surface and then you have to address it." And I thought it was handled beautifully, and I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic for what's to come.
Yeah.
Because if they anchor this like this with Carrie,
Mhm.
I think it will work. And with Miranda, Miranda needs to get back to being herself.
A little bit.
Yeah, and I think in this week's episode, she was herself for the first time. Like, you saw a glimpse of the old Miranda coming through.
I agree. What are you not liking? What do you think, they need to chop, axe, throw in the trash pile, whatever?
I don't generally like the storylines with the kids in general,
Mm,
but I did like the whole Brady thing because I
mhm,
hated Louisa. She was annoying, she was
mhm,
kinda bitchy. So
mhm,
I'm interested to see what's gonna happen with that, you know, and will Steve play into this? Because the son is in crisis. Like, are we gonna see
mm.
that? So I'm curious about that. What I'm
What
not liking is just yeah, that whole MILF thing was so cringy.
oh,
I did
so
not like it.
you know what it is, Leslie? I'm not liking Charlotte this season, and
And
that's
she
not
was
like me. I love
great last
Charlotte.
season. Yeah.
Yes. Charlotte is like Charlotte is what you see is what you get with Charlotte. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? Like, she's always got kind of this, like, little spacey debutante, do you know what I mean? But, like, she was a heart of gold and so sweet and so genuine, and now I just feel like she's been relegated to these stupid storylines of just being support for everyone else. It's really dumb.
Which I think if you saw the previews for what's coming up, she's gonna wanna go back to work, and
Good.
that will be interesting because when Charlotte had her gallery and everything, there were great storylines there.
Guys, everyone needs that friend in their life to tell you when you need to go back to work.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you had a layoff, maybe you lost your job, you know what I mean? And you're like skating by, wondering what you're doing for a while. And then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I may have been out of work too long. You need
And
that friend
also,
that's like,
she
you
took
need to go back to
time
work.
to build a family. But these kids are grown. They're all teenagers. You can
Yeah,
go back to work if that's what you want. You don't have to, but
right.
it seems like there's something missing in her life, and I think that's what it is.
Yeah, and I'm not saying like, this could pertain to anybody, genderless, whatever, who's out of work. Just when you've been out of work a while and it's time. And when you're
Yeah.
obsessing over your kids' friends making MILF lists, it's time. It's time to go back and do something. Like she doesn't have to go to work, but like do something because you can't be doing this.
Yeah, I mean, she did do, like, like PTA stuff, you'd
Yeah, and I
see
think didn't she wasn't she, like, on the board of a big charity or something, or was that
Pediatric AIDS Fund, or at least she said that when she was with Trey. I don't think
okay,
that's true now, and maybe she mentioned something last season about some kind of, like, art thing, but I don't know if she was on the board or she was just referring to, like, her past experience.
right,
It was a
right,
little unclear.
yeah. Alright, girl, well, it's been lovely talking about this with you. I didn't get scenes for next episode, which I'm a terrible human for that, but I
You need to
did
see all the way through the credits, and then they'll show it to you.
see, like, in that trailer that we saw last episode that I think we're gonna see Steve next week.
And I'm guessing if we do, it has to do because of Brady and this whole
Mhm,
thing, and
mhm.
that would make sense to kind of give them that family moment.
Yeah, yeah. Alright, why don't you tell everyone where they can find the Leslie DJ? Wah, wah,
You could
wah.
find me at Sinister Girls, and hey, guess what? My podcast used to be hosted on Stitcher as well, and Stitcher is
Oh,
going kaboot.
oh.
So, my podcast would still be available on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, and, on my website, sinistergirls.com, but no longer on Stitcher as of August 23rd, I believe.
Are you gonna move it to a different host?
They did send me an email about different, like,
Mhm.
places that I could probably submit it. I think it was acquired by SiriusXM or something and Pandora, and they're, like, getting rid of Stitcher. That's, like, the whole thing.
Okay. Alright.
So if you do listen to this podcast, if it is on Stitcher, you gotta find an alternative
Well, is
to
Stitcher just
listen to it.
an app or is it a host?
It's an app, and it also hosts, like,
Oh,
podcasts.
okay. Alright. Because I know we host on Acast. Shout out Acast. And, no, I'm only kidding, they do nothing for us. But, we host on Acast and but I don't think they have their own player, you know what I mean? So I wasn't sure
Yeah.
if companies do. Alright, guys, and if you haven't already, you need to get into our Facebook group, Backdoor Friends. Leslie, do you know what a
So dirty.
backdoor friend is?
Well, because I'm still in just like that in Sex and the City mindset, I thought it was like anal.
Of
Am I
course,
wrong?
yes.
Okay.
So, Pastor Jackie tells us in Love and Death that there are front door friends and back door friends. And the front door friends come over when expected and you know what they're going to say. And the back door friends, they just barge right into your kitchen. They don't care. They just dump all their trash. They'll help you hide a body, whatever.
Oh.
And you know what? That's the kind of Facebook group I want to run. People who will help me hide a body. So they're in there. um, we also welcome hey, if you love anal and call yourself a backdoor friend, come on in. We'll accept
Come
you.
on in.
Come
The
on in.
water's warm.
Fly your freak flag. We don't care. Come on in. We love you. So join our Facebook group and you can find that in the show notes, but it's also at if you look for us on Facebook, facebook.com/Little Miss Recap, you'll see the group pin there. And follow us on Instagram. Instagram.
And also, our listeners from 6 Degrees of Reality TV, thank you so much for listening to the first episode
Yeah, a
on
bunch
that
came over.
feed.
That was great.
Hopefully, you came over to Little Miss Recap and that you enjoy our hot takes. Amy doesn't believe that Carrie deserves, or Sarah Jessica deserves, an Emmy nomination for
Mm-mm,
that one
mm-mm,
scene. I
mm-mm.
do, but that's just me because I love SJP.
I will die on this hill. Okay. So thank you so much, guys. I'm going to play the music to play us out. And Leslie, thank you so much.